There are lots of optimizations we can make to our campaigns in Google Ads to make them perform better. And because of that, manual reviews and optimizations can take quite a lot of time. There's just a lot of adjustments we can make. So if you find yourself always using the same filters, making the same types of changes, today you're in luck. I'm going to talk about how we can use automated rules to schedule some of those reviews and make adjustments for us based on filters we have set up so that you can get back to the work that the machines can't do for us. In your Google Ads account, there are a couple of different ways that you can start to create automated rules on different aspects within the account. The first is probably the easiest. If you have, let's say, just these top 3 campaigns that you want to create an automated rule for, you can come over here, check the box next to them, and then in the Edit section, you can come down here and see that there is the option to create an automated rule that will apply to these 3 campaigns that we've selected. That's one way to do it. If you want to have a broader sweeping automated rule, we can also come up here into the Tools section, and then in Bulk Actions you'll see there is a Rules option. This is going to take us to Rules Manager, so let's go there. Here you can see all of the rules that have been enabled in this account in the past. That top one has a little bit of an alert on it because it's based on average position, which is now no longer a metric that Google Ads supports. But to start creating your first automated rule, you can come over here, click the blue plus button, and here you'll see all the different layers within a Google Ads account where you can apply an automated rule. You can set them up for campaigns, ad groups, keywords, ads, display keywords, topics, placements, audiences, age, gender, parental status, and income ranges. So there's lots of different areas where you can set up these automated rules to either make changes for you or alert you to performance trends. In this account, I actually do need to go ahead and set up a keyword rule. So I'm going to do that. We're going to choose keyword rules. And now it'll open up the builder to where we can start to create the automated rule and tell Google what we want it to do and what keywords we want it to make that change to if we want to make a change. The first thing we can do up here at the top is to give the rule a name, depending on how many rules you want to have. As you could see on the last screen that we were on, I have a number of automated rules in this account. I want to give this a name where I can go in, look at that rules manager, and just know kind of relatively quickly what that rule was intended to do, so I don't have to go in and dig. Lots of times there's going to be a preset name that just says like increase bids. That doesn't tell you anything. So I'm going to give this a name that will stick out to me so I'll know what it means later. At a glance, I can easily tell that this is going to be applied to my UK campaigns. This is part of a generic push that we're trying to run for this account. We're doing an experiment to see if we can get more aggressive on non-brand keywords and how that impacts performance. On Mondays, we're increasing the bid, and this test is running from January to February of 2021. There's a lot of information right there within that name, and all I had to do was take a little bit of time and type it in. Spend a little bit of time and make sure that your naming conventions make sense. The next section just talks about the owner of this rule, which doesn't really apply here because we're setting this up in a standalone account. But if you were doing this in an MCC, something along those lines, you might need to make some changes here depending on who owns the rule for that specific account. The next step is to choose the action. What do we want Google to do to the keywords that I'm going to choose here in a little bit? You'll see over on the right, it says, since you're creating a keyword rule, the action list only includes actions that can be applied to keywords. So if you'll remember that big list of different rule types that we saw in the rules manager, that means that the actions are going to be different for each one of those depending on what level you chose. So for the keyword rules, we can choose to either enable keywords, pause keywords, change the keyword bid or final URL, or send an email. For example, if you were going to set up a campaign level rule, some of these are going to be the same. You could either pause or enable the campaign. You could send an email, but then the only other option is going to be to change the budget. We don't need to change bids or final URLs at the campaign level, but we also don't need to change the budget at the keyword level. So all the actions are going to be tailored for whatever kind of rule you decided to run. The top 4 of these are going to make a change to your keywords, so it's easy to see the value that you have here. You're either going to get your keywords turned on, off, or you're going to change something about them. But sending an email might not seem quite as clear what the value is here. Think about certain scenarios where you want to keep an eye on performance, but you don't necessarily know what change you want to make. Maybe you're trying to see if a keyword bid will either result in a better or worse cost per conversion. If you're trying to see what type of impression share metrics you can have, there's lots of different scenarios where you might just want to be alerted to a change in performance, but you don't need Google to make a change for you just yet. That's how I use these send email options. If there's something that you just want to be alerted to if it changes, let's say if a keyword has 0 impressions over the past 2 days when you know it should be a very high volume keyword, or even the opposite. Maybe some of your brand keywords, you want to keep an eye on them, and if impressions go up by a certain amount, you want to hop in, see what's going on, make sure that nothing is happening to the brand name and people are just searching it because it's in the news or something along those lines. Sending an email can be a great option to make sure that you are aware of the trends in the account, but that you don't need Google to make a change for you just yet. For the example that I'm doing today, I need to increase the keyword bids, so I'm going to do change keyword bids as my action. Next, I get to choose from the drop-down, just the way that you would if you were going to edit keyword bids in the interface. I can either set new bids, I can increase or decrease, or I can raise the bids to either the first page or the top of page CPC. So depending on what I wanted to do here, I can choose the right option. I know that I want to set these new bids to be $20, so I'm just going to leave it as set new bids and type in 20. Now that we've chosen the action we want Google to take, we need to tell it where we want to take this action. What keywords do we want this to apply on? So to do that, I'm going to scroll down a little bit so we can use the bottom portion of this interface. And the first thing you get to do is choose where you want to find these keywords. You can either find them in selected accounts, which is effectively going to be the entire account for this example. But again, if you're in an MCC, you can choose the sub accounts that are in there. You can choose selected campaigns or selected ad groups. For this specific change, I know exactly the conditions that my keywords are going to meet, and I don't really need to filter these because they're not exactly in a certain set of ad groups or a certain set of campaigns. They're kind of all across the account, but I have a different way of filtering those. So for right now, I'm just going to click selected accounts and stick with that. The next piece we get to choose is the condition that our keywords need to meet. As this thing says over here off to the right, conditions are applied each time the rule runs. So if new or updated items match, the rule will be applied to those items. A lot of this means that it's going to change which keywords are going to get this increased bid depending on whatever the conditions are. So here's the list of all the conditions we can set up in the account. There's some based on performance, viewability, conversions, different attributes, bid simulator, competitive metrics, Gmail metric, quality score, custom columns, lots of different conditions. Pretty much everything that you can make a performance for, you can create an automated rule for in Google Ads. If, for example, I wanted to change the keyword bids to that $20 limit based on the number of conversions or the cost of the conversions that a certain keyword had, I would just come in here and let's say that the conversions needed to be greater than 5. Then I can click apply. And now every time this rule runs, it's going to review the keywords in the account, find all of them that have more than 5 conversions, and change the bid to $20. That is a very interesting type of rule. It's probably a bad example. That's not what I want to do here. But that's how the rule would run, and that's what the conditions are telling you when it says it's going to reset each time. And if new keywords would fit into that condition of having more than 5 conversions, even if that keyword bid wasn't changed last time, it would be changed this time, and vice versa. If it had the keyword bid increased to $20 last time this rule ran, but since then it hasn't had 5 conversions, it's not going to change the keyword bid again. For this specific example, I said earlier that I have a different way of filtering which keywords I want. So I'm going to come in here to add a condition, go down to attributes, and we actually put labels on the keywords that we wanted to increase the bid for because they were so spread out across different campaigns, different ad groups. They all had different themes to them, and they all have very different performance. So I'm going to choose label, and then I'm going to search for the label that I want. Click this top one that says generic push January to February 2021. Matches very closely with my naming convention, and then click apply. So now what my rule is set up to do is says that when this rule runs, any keyword that has the label of generic push January to February 2021, increase that keyword bid to $20. This is how I've set this up to make sure that we're only increasing the bid on very specific keywords. You'll notice earlier that when we came over to this apply section, there's only the option to set up a rule for keywords in selected accounts, campaigns, or ad groups. You cannot choose from a keyword level in this automated rule builder. So one way around that is what I just showed you, to utilize a label to make sure that you're filtering for only the keywords that have the right label. But there is a secondary way that you can make changes like this, and for that we're going to hop back into regular Ads Manager. Let's say you have a handful of keywords that you want to make an automated rule for, but just like mine, they don't fit quite into a nice little bucket of campaigns, ad groups, something like that. To set up an automated rule for those, if you're not going to use the label route, all you have to do is do what we did earlier with the campaign example. You can check the box next to all of the individual keywords, come up to edit, and then click Create Automated Rule down here all the way at the bottom. When you do that, you'll see that it created a completely new rule, so a lot of those fields that we've already set up in our other example are now empty, but the Apply To section looks different. Now it has selected keywords, and it says the 4 keywords that I chose from that list in the account. So if you need an automated rule set up only for a specific set of keywords, campaigns, ad groups, and they don't really fit into a clean box, you can always go back to the interface, check the boxes next to them, create an automated rule, and it'll apply only to those specific pieces that you want them to apply to. Now let's hop back into our original example and finish that one out. The next thing we need to determine is the frequency that we want this rule to run. On the right, it says a rule can run once or on a recurring schedule. The rule will start running during the time that you specify. So as it says, the first thing that you get to choose over here is how frequently you want this rule to run. It can run once or on a daily, weekly, or monthly schedule, depending on how frequently you need something to be changed or you want to be alerted to a change in conditions. For right now, I'm going to choose once. When you choose that, you get to decide which specific day you want the rule to run. So you can do it either for the next day that you have here, or you can do it on some specific date in the future, depending on what change you need to make. So for this example, I named it Mondays because I want that rule to run recurring on Mondays. So I'm going to end up with a weekly schedule, but letting an automated rule run once can definitely have value. This is probably the type that I use more often than anything, to be quite honest. I set these up when I need to make sure that campaigns are either enabled or paused, usually for certain holidays or certain sales and promotions that we have running in the account. If you have a discount that's supposed to be running for a certain date range, it's so easy to go in and just enable certain ads or campaigns to be turned on a specific day at a specific time, and then make sure that they are scheduled to go off when they need to, so that you don't have to be the one manually going in and turning campaigns or specific ad copy on and off. Let Google do that for you. It's very easy, and you need to use your time doing other things. So rules running once can definitely have a lot of value. If you want to set up a rule to run on a daily basis, all you're going to be given after that is the time when you want something to run. Here you can see that most of these are set up to say that you want it to run between a certain hour. So between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m., between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. This is because usually Google tries to run your automated rule as early as it can within the hour that you set. But given that there are probably a lot of other people out there scheduling things, automating their campaigns, it's going to run within that hour. More often than not, it's probably fine if you let your rule run within a specific hour, because an hour is not quite as much time. It's probably not as crucial that something happens at a specific time. But if it is, you can scroll all the way down here to the bottom and choose Set Time. And now every rule that I set up from here on out is going to let me choose a specific 15-minute increment for when it will run the rule. Let's say I needed it to run at 8:45 on a daily basis. It'll do that, and it'll run the rule at 8:45. So depending on how specific you need your rule to be, you can set it up to run within an hour or at a 15-minute increment. We'll go back over here. I'm going to skip weekly for now because that's what I'm going to end up with. But on a monthly basis, you get to choose which day of the month. So if you need it to run on the 7th of every month, on the 10th of every month, and then the same sort of thing, you can set up whatever time you want it to run on that day within the month. And now let's close out with weekly, so I can set this up the way that I need it to. Next, you choose the day of the week that you want it to run. For this example, I want it to run on Mondays, and I want it to run really early in the morning. So I'm actually just going to set it up for 12 a.m. and make sure that everything gets done very, very early. Next, you get to choose what look-back window Google is going to use. If I hover over this little question mark, you can see that it says set how much data Google evaluates for your rule requirements. For this specific example, I'm using a label. So there's not really a look back window that I need, but if you're setting up a rule based on performance, this is very important. Let's say that we're going to use that example that I used earlier and say if something has 5 conversions or more, give it a $20 bid. This look back window can be really important there because you can tell it to look back at only the last week, the last 7 days, the last 14 days, all the way up to all-time data. So what it's going to do is take this time frame into account and say we're going to push your bid up to $20 for all keywords that have more than 5 conversions in only the last 7 days. Or it's going to look at the last 90 days and say, we're going to push the keyword bids up to $20 if you had more than 5 conversions. So it's very important to make sure that whatever type of automated rule you're trying to set and whatever type of change you're trying to make in the account, this look back window is applicable. On top of that, if you have something that's running on a weekly schedule, let's say I wanted to increase the bid by 10% if my keyword had a conversion and the cost per conversion was in my target range. So we're trying to incrementally get more and more competitive on a certain keyword on a weekly basis. I should set my time range only to look back over the last 7 days, because think about it. Every Monday, that rule is going to run, and on some Mondays, it's going to increase the bid by 10%. So if you then used a look back window of 14 days and you ran the rule again, the performance metrics that you changed the bid on last Monday, which is from the prior week, are still there. They're still part of the conditions that Google is looking at. So if you're going to set up an automated rule, make sure that you're setting the look back window accordingly. If you're using a weekly schedule, you probably need to look back at only the last 7 days or a certain time frame depending on how big your change is. If you're setting something up on a monthly basis, you likely don't want to look back any further than the past 30 days because that's when your last change may or may not have occurred, and you want to see what the performance has been like since that change, not including the time frame before that. So keep in mind that this look back window does impact what aspects of your account will fit the right conditions and then be applied into the automated rule. As I said earlier, my specific rule that we're setting up here is based on a label, so it doesn't really matter what time frame I use because the label is either applied or not applied, and it's not going to go back and retroactively realize that this label was applied to a keyword and then removed. It's basically if a label is on the keyword when the rule runs, that's what's going to fit. Then the last thing we need to set up are the email results and when you are going to get an email. There are a few options we can choose here. The first option is every time this rule runs. This is probably best suited for those when you want to only get an email alert if a certain portion of your account meets a requirement. This is something where you just want to be alerted to say, hey, performance looks a little bit strange. You should probably go in and check it out. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up with a pretty full inbox depending on how many of these rules you have. The next option is only if there are changes or errors. So if you just want to be alerted to when there has been a change or when there's been a problem, that's the option for you. You can also be alerted only if there are errors. This is something that I'll probably use for this account because this is something that's going to run every single week. I don't need to know that it ran every week. I only want to know if there's a problem with it. I trust Google. It's going to run my automated rule. But if something goes wrong, I want it to let me know. The last option is just no emails, which depending on how many rules you have, what changes those are supposed to make, that sort of thing, that can be the right option for you. I still like to say only if there are errors. I just want to make sure that if anything went wrong, I can go in and check it out if I need to. Lastly, you can choose who gets those email alerts. So right now it's going to default to my email, but if you needed to add different people to that list, you can come down here and just click in the box and add whatever users you want to make sure that they know what also happened. Then down at the bottom, we have a couple different options. We can either cancel, which I'm not going to do. You can save the rule, or if you're trying to set something up and you're not quite sure the impact it's going to have, you can also hit preview. So I'm going to do that here and show you what that looks like. After it ran for a little bit, we get this box that shows me the different campaigns, ad groups, and the change that happened within those campaigns and ad groups. Each of these line items just says keyword max CPC changed from $10 to $20, and it tells me up at the top that approximately 182 keywords would change if you ran this rule now. I happen to know that that is the right number of keywords and that is the right change in bid, so everything looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And now I'm sent back out to the automated rule manager, and we can see my rule right up here at the top, the generic push on Mondays from January to February. From this screen, you can do a number of different things. You can come over here off to the right, and you can either pause or remove this rule if we want to. So at the end of February, I'm going to need to come in here and pause this rule, or I can remove it if I want to. But I need to make sure that it stops making these changes in February. So that's the first thing you can do. If you want to edit the rule, you might think that you need to come over here and check this box and go up to edit, but you'd be wrong because you can only do enable, pause, and remove. If you want to edit the rule that you have here, you actually need to scroll all the way over to the right. And in this furthest right column, there's going to be actions. You can either run the rule now, you can force it to run whenever you want, or you can come in and click edit and it'll open up that builder that we had just a little bit before. And then we do have a good overview over here that shows the frequency that the rule is going to run. And it also shows the last run date. So right now my rule shows blank for the last run date because it has not been a Monday yet. So it's not going to have anything here, but it's going to run tomorrow morning. So when I come in here, it will show that the rule has run on that date. Lastly, you can see the results of what your rules were just by clicking on the checkbox next to it, coming up here and clicking results. You then need to make sure that your date range is the right one, and you can see each line item of every time that rule ran, what the changes were. And then in some scenarios, you can actually even click undo to undo the changes that were made during the time that that rule ran. So there's a lot of ways that you can keep an eye on what Google is doing with your automated rules to make sure that you're not having any unintended consequences from the automations that you set up. Overall, there are lots of ways you can make automated rules in Google Ads to save you a lot of time and take care of a lot of adjustments that you don't need to go in and do every day. If you need to set up a filter to increase bids for keywords based on performance for the past 7 days, you don't have to do that. Google will do that for you. And if you want to check in on the results, reverse the changes, or make adjustments to your rules, you can easily go in and augment them later to make sure that you're hitting the metrics that you need to. So don't be shy about utilizing automated rules to do actions for you so you can get back to doing the more strategic work of building campaigns, writing ad copy, all of those sorts of tasks that the Google machine can't do for you. Thanks for watching our video. If you thought it was useful, give us a thumbs up below.
We release a new video at least once a week, so if you want to get notified of when a new one comes out, be sure to subscribe to the Paid Media Pros channel.